We're going to roll with it. All right. Welcome to a live session of the Oak and Rock Fatherhood YouTube channel run by myself, Zachary Small from thefamilyalpha.com and fraternityofexcellence.com, as well as Anthony Migliorino from peacefulfathers.com. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Yes. What's going on, Zach? How we doing?
What's up with the different backdrop? You on vacation?
Oh, yeah. Living it up in New York. I had to come back.
You can't let go. You can't totally commit to the South. What is it?
Well, the good thing is I'll have stellar Wi-Fi for tonight's meeting here, for tonight's conversation.
Anybody who's been watching this for a while is very, very thrilled to hear that, especially me. So what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about dad Twitter. We're talking about the growth of these pro-strong father accounts that are coming around. I dropped a tweet where I had said basically, the deconstruction of the family unit, that is not a conspiracy theory. That's happening. The rise in all of these accounts and the fact that all these men are coming together and they're saying, hey, let's talk about fatherhood. That's not coincidence. That's intentional. Something's driving this to happen. So, Anthony, when you started out on this, you came into it, right now we're going to go to dad Twitter in a second. But before we go to dad Twitter, let's talk about Peaceful Fathers. What was it, your origin story that drove you to saying this specific thing, peaceful fatherhood, is what I'm going to bring to the internet? You could have brought your experience with automotive. You could have brought just masculine, the way I did, just lifestyle. You chose specifically fatherhood. What pushed you to that?
No, that's good because, I I had an auto body shop previously, auto collision, chop shop, whatever you want to call it. But there's 1,000,001 auto collision shops in America, right? You can get your car fixed anywhere. So when I came across peaceful parenting, just like what we see on Twitter now, right? When there is a need for something that's pressing in the world, I think you'll see men step up, right? This is historically what happens. When there is a need, when there's despair, when there's hopelessness, when the majority of people feel that things are lost in society, men step up. This is what happens. And I think we're seeing that in Twitter, right? We're seeing fathers come together. We might have different backgrounds. We might believe in different religions, different ideologies. But the one thing that's drawing us together is that connection of fatherhood, right? We share the same values, the same principles. So for me, it's cool when I say, don't hit your kids. And it gets heard on some other fathers. They understand it. They say, yeah, I support that. I want to raise strong, confident children, degrade them and beat them down. I want to support them in growing stronger because I see there's such a need for it in the world. So with Peaceful Fathers, that is definitely something that I saw that was needed, right? I understood that there's not enough emphasis on that aspect of being a good man. Everybody was talking about finance, about getting stronger, about, having a good marriage. There was not a lot of conversation about becoming a better father. So I just thought it needed attention. I started writing about it. I started talking about it. And before you knew it, there's thousands of guys now who have attention to this topic, who want to help, who want to, be a part of this growth.
That's extremely well said. When you look at, we talk a lot, let's not discuss the problem. Let's focus on the solution. With all the opportunities you had to do anything you wanted, that was the problem you saw. And you came to it with, here are some solutions. Here are the solutions I've found, and wanting to be the change and all that. I think that's an incredible testament. And I hadn't thought about it from that angle. So it's cool when we're doing this live and kind of figuring it out, like, oh shit, we probably should have spoke about that prior too, because that's a hell of an insight, but that is what this is about. Men stepping up, men doing the right thing. And one of the things we did is for today's show, we had thrown a link to several of the fathers who are very active within the Fraternity of Excellence community, to get some of those dads if they wanted to share their story. And a few of them had chimed in. So they'll be dropping in and out throughout the show. We've actually got one about to bring on. His name's Marcel. Dude's a beast. He's helped me personally, significantly. But to see this man's growth, it's been fantastic. Anthony, I know, will say the same because he's been a lot of the fatherhood sessions. Anthony's had quite a bit with him. But I'm going to bring Marcel on now, and we're going to dive right into this. So, Marcel, welcome to the Oak and Rock Fatherhood Show. Great to see you, brother.
What's going on, gentlemen? How you doing?
Oh, we're doing great.
Doing good.
So what we're talking about right now is how Anthony, what brought him to starting Peaceful Fathers. And one of the things I had noticed is that it's not an echo chamber when you're seeing all these new dads coming together, because at first I was like, maybe it's just me. I'm only noticing these fathers because I'm talking about fatherhood. But I looked back at it and I started looking in other places, and a lot of fathers are taking to social media to talk about fatherhood, to talk about parenting, to talk about connecting to their children. And that's somewhat of a new trend to be doing that. And Marcel, you speak quite frequently on several aspects within the community, but one of those things is fatherhood. One of the main things that you're hitting on is the relationship you have with your family. So I guess I would throw the ball to you is, A, what brought you to speaking on this right now on the show? And B, was there any single moment that drove you to wanting to live more intentionally as a father?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think my discovery was when, well, first of all, it's not common for men to have forums where we talk about being a strong father, right? And I think it takes a few times for a man to really realize how magnetic that center is for you to be a strong father and how at home you feel in that environment. And so being around other strong men is the first step that was a wow moment for me. But, what I'm focusing on now is realizing that everybody, we have this sort of center place where we exchange comments. And there's some men that have, in fact, even in the last week, have shared some stories and some concerns and some, things they're confronting right now that are, the level of trust that a man has to have in another trust to be able to say these things is monumental. I don't have that in my work environment. I likely don't have it in the majority of my close friends. And it made me step back and realize that, it's really almost a hydra being a strong man. I mean, you find things about yourself that are instinctual that you are really repressing. You realize that you want to kind of share this with other strong men and make them realize, hey, it makes no sense to be pushing back or beating your children, right? And so where I'm focused on most of it now, I think, is looking at being a father as less of an immediate answer. I want to focus on me. I want to focus on what I can do to be more clear-minded, to be a good father, to, kind of stoop myself down to the level of the children and understand calmly. So take all the chaos we do as adults, focus on the innocence of that child, and then understand how to communicate with them. And so that's what I'm focusing on now. I'm realizing that this is kind of a never-ending journey. I think Anthony often shares that, he learned the hard way. There's years that he's missed in the process. And so I benefit from some of that wisdom, Anthony. But, I think the first steps in my mind are the hardest. I think any man that's trying to make this transition, the very, very first few steps are the hardest because it seems like you're not getting any results, and we're used to that.
Yeah, well, to emphasize the mindset shift, right? What we're seeing with fathers being more involved, more active in this space. Marcel is one of those guys where I throw ideas at him and I can smell the wood burning, right? I can see the gears working. He's thinking he'll come up with something and he already answers, he already has an answer to his question before he even gets to me. So it's cool to see, right? It's cool to see dads engaged and involved. And I think it's a lot different, obviously, from how we were raised. And Zac, me and you talk about this all the time, right? Let's raise our kids better than our parents did. But I think that's pretty common. I think that's going to happen regardless for the most part, right? We're going to become better. It's kind of the evolution of humanity. But my emphasis is on, if you really want to be better, and we talk about this again all the time, you can read books on finance, you can read books on weightlifting, you can hire a coach to train you in the gym. How many men are actively improving their fatherhood skills, their fatherhood communication, by having these conversations, by reading books on parenting, by talking to other men who are squared away and who are leading their family properly? And I guarantee you that it's going to be a small percentage, but the cool thing is that it's growing, right? I'm starting to see it take shape, I'm starting to see the effects in the world. And it's pretty awesome to see. It truly is.
No, absolutely. And so you look at Adam down here from at Building Better Dads. which I have to give him a shout out. He has one of the coolest profile photos. And normally I'm upset with guys who don't have like their face. I give him a hard time because I'm like, what are you hiding, bro? But he's got the dad flexing with the kids on his shoulders with the Superman cape. Big shout out to Building Better Dads. Definitely, if you're on Twitter, make sure you're following him. There's going to be a few of the dad Twitter guys popping in here, so I'll be sharing them as much as I can. But when he talks about, I'm excited to hear about how to fix families by fathers fixing themselves. And we have another FOE man who's going to be joining the session right now, and that's Jared. Jared, who you might recognize from being our recent guest. We just dropped that, and people are loving that session. So if you haven't checked it out, check that video out. But Jared has been doing the work. And it started with Jared focusing on Jared. He's gone through, he's done the cycle. Let me look in me. And when you fix that, now you can reach out and bring peace there. So Jared, when you started to work on, or actually, let me clarify. When did you realize to give your family your best, you had to fix you first and not try to fix them?
I think that I realized that, well, I sort of realized it in the background for a really long time, but I never really understood how to do that. I just knew that I wanted to. And it wasn't until about, 2.5, 3 years ago that I finally sort of reached that point where I was like, I'm not doing this well on my own. You know, I didn't have a great dad as an example. I had men that I could look at that helped me out. But it was that moment when it was like, again, I can't really point to a moment, but it was just a suddenly dawning on me that, man, this isn't, I'm not getting where I want to go. I'm not having the results that I want, and I need to find some other way of doing this. And that was when I started to look around for other sources, ran across your Twitter account, Zac, and started to embrace the idea of looking to other men. And that led to me being able to talk to Anthony and working with other men to sort of improve my own skills in fatherhood. And the change that came to me allowed me to have the courage to do something more dramatic with my family. The status quo wasn't working anymore. And I needed to find the strength within myself to say, it is time to make a drastic change. It is time to do something very different. And once I found that inner courage, that power, that's when things started to really change in our family and in our home.
Well, it's like Adam says, don't just be a better father, be a better you to be a better father. And that power, I can't help but recognize you just made me the gateway drug. So I'm like the pot while Anthony's like heroin, dad crack over there. He's the next level up if you really want to get intense. But it's absolutely true. You can't, we talk a lot about, you can't self-sacrifice your way to happiness. It's not about sacrificing you to let me make the wife happy. Let me make my children happy. It's, I've got to be happy. I've got to make myself someone of value, someone of pride and confidence, someone who just has a sense of self-worth. And then I can lead those within the family. And then I can show them through my actions what it's like to take care of yourself and treat yourself like someone you like.
It's in your demeanor more than anything. Like, I know that my kids all liked me and respected me, but it was more of a like and respect out of fear. I was the heavy, I was the muscle in the household. Mom raised the kids, and I was just there to provide the threat of punishment if they ever did anything wrong. And it wasn't
fun.
it was great times. Lots of screwed up relationships there from that one. But it wasn't until I was fixing myself, and I came out the other side of some of the really rough patches of that my kids looked at me differently. My kids reacted to me differently. My wife reacted to me differently. There was a greater sense of respect, and even my kids now started to like brag to their friends about, hey, my dad, he did this, he does this now. And it was, and not to say that from a point of pride, but that as the realization that, now that I had fixed myself or was working on fixing myself, I'm never going to be fixed. But now that I was improving on something that was visible to the other people in my family, that's when things really started to shift for the better. So that was a really happy realization that was something that was working in my favor.
I think Anthony makes a great point. He says, how do you share yourself if the cup is empty? And again, this is another one of the dad Twitter guys we're talking about that's out there sharing the good word. So at limit _ like 4 underscores and then less, you'll find him there. He's all out there. You'll find him on my timeline, a bunch of the guys' timeline. These dads are coming together. And Jared, like you're saying, they're having those experiences. So it's not about, well, hey, here's what I'm saying and just blindly follow me. No, take what we're saying and apply it. And then watch how your family responds. Watch how the kids, they're genuinely interested, or they're genuinely no longer afraid to tell you something that might come with confrontation. Hey, I did this thing you told me not to do. Hey, that happened accidentally, whatever it is. They're not afraid of you. They're just going to tell you like, hey, this happened. And you're like, wow, look at our relationship now. You took the fear out of there, the confrontation, put in some peace, and now you want to talk to me. And Jared, dude, I bet you. You are an imposing figure, man. Like just naturally, your voice is deep. You're like 8 feet tall. I could see how just without saying a word, they're like you have the mean dad. Like
he's pretty calm when he's baking bread at 4 a.m.
Until he's slamming it. He's got to knead that bread. That's some violent stuff right there.
As sort of a story of that, my daughter was describing me to her boyfriend. She has a new boyfriend that she wanted to meet me, and he's like, "Well, what is your dad like?" And she describes it. She goes, "Well, he's really big and he's jacked, and he's really intimidating, and you're going to be scared of him." And she says that while laughing, because she knows that's the impression that other people will have of me. But now she knows better. She knows a different me. She knows that I am not that kind of guy to her anymore. I was a while back, but we've changed the nature of that relationship by changing who I am and how I interact with her. It has changed the way that she perceives me, and now she thinks it's hilarious that her friends are scared of me. I kind of enjoy that myself, but it's such a transformation in the personal attitude that I no longer needed to be intimidating. I no longer needed to be the fear and the heavy. What I needed and realized that I had been missing was connection. And again, I would have never realized that had I not had the courage to approach that parenting from a different level after having realized where I was before.
That's a good point, Jared, because a lot of times when we show that hard exterior, it's because ourselves we're afraid, right? We're afraid to open up. We're afraid to let go, to show our kids who we truly are, because we have this stigma that we have to be always hard. We always have to be the punisher, the enforcer. We always have to be strict and rigid. And you can't, I don't care who you are, you cannot build a relationship on that. It's not going to happen. And as a man, I think that is one of the greatest strengths that we can show. When we can go out and, compete and dominate the world and do good things and be strong men in society, but come home and we can be compassionate and we can be kind and we can love our kids unconditionally, it shows great strength from within, right? It shows that we are capable of not only loving our kids, but loving ourselves enough to be with them completely, right? To not have them fear us, to not have them hold any resentment or any shame in our presence, but that we can continue to build and work on that relationship where we both enjoy being together. I mean, to me, that's one of the key aspects or key goals of fatherhood. That's what we should all be striving for.
Well, when you look at it too, and I would love to toss this one to Marcel. We come from a place, or I'm speaking for all of us. We're coming from a place, where you've got these men talking about what it is to be a man. And very rarely in the discussion is the topic of fatherhood broached on what it is to be a man. You've got to be rich. You've got to be strong. You've got to be lean. You've got to have women. You've got to have cars, drink whiskey, smoke cigars.
Stop talking about me.
I'm just saying. I'm looking right at you. I'm just going through the checklist of who you are, Anthony. That's what a man is. But never are they saying you've got to be compassionate towards your children. And that's one of the things we're pushing here. And every man on here, I can speak on behalf of, is strong mentally, physically, spiritually, and working to get stronger. And none of them find their source of strength or what it is to be a man by putting those within their home down.
Yes.
They are building every single one of those lives up. I see these men. I speak to them daily. I know as close as one can know without being there, sort of what's going on in that unit and where they're at, and them with myself as well. And each of us is working our damnedest to be the strongest man and father in that. They're not separate. It's one thing. Good men make good fathers if you start making fatherhood a priority. So Marcel, has your focus on the family and being more intentional with being a father, have you been able to bring that to the men in your network, like your social circle? Have you made it a little more normal to speak about fatherhood, I guess?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think part of the flip over really is figuring out how the heck did I even get here, right? Like, why is it that we don't talk about the importance of being a father, or if you think about all the conversations, man goes to work, thinks he's king, comes home, and then screams at his children, and then tries to find his own little man cave time away from his children. Our children have the potential of being our closest friends, right? They need from us in a way now that they won't need later. And so it kind of, as I work through all this, why am I not talking with other fathers as frequently as I do now, right? Why wasn't it something that we'd be comfortable sharing or just directly asking a question? You know what it really is? I mean, I think every one of us has a friend, right, that was an amazing basketball player or a swimmer. My wife's a swimmer. And, it's hard for me to get her back in the pool because she finished at the top, right? And so she's afraid of that moment where she would jump back in the pool and maybe not swim as fast as she was in the past. I think that's the issue with parenting. I think some of these fathers are afraid of tackling it, of really going in the room, putting themselves, sort of vulnerable in front of their friends and their kids and saying, I'm all in. So they functionally just abandon it. And, and I realized now that's what I was doing. I was not, you get to these quick fixes like screaming at your child, or this is daddy time, I need this time to myself. And I think a big underpinning to a lot of that is because I didn't know what to do. I didn't have all the answers. I'm really comfortable being confident and strong in other venues. But as a father, none of my friends are talking about this. I mean, sure, they'll go to a baseball game and scream at the kid about the position he should be playing in. But beyond that, they're not coaching the child in life. And I don't think that I really had, so it wasn't common ground for me. So it was foreign territory and I just abandoned it.
Well, I think you have to make a choice in life, right? There's like a crossroads that you come to, no matter what age you are. It happened to me relatively young, as a young father. But I think there's a point where you have to say, hey, I'm going to work on being a dad, or I'm not going to give a shit, right? I'm going to resort to old ways. I'm going to let the pain that I've never healed from control who I am. I'm going to let my family's dysfunction, prior family dysfunction, dictate how my house is run. Or you're going to say, hey, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be a man and I'm going to make improvements. I don't care I don't care how many uncomfortable conversations I have to have with my kids. I don't care if we're going to feel sad, I don't care if there's going to be mistakes being made. And once you get past that, that's when you start to take the steps and you see that it's worth it, right? The struggle that you have to go through to be a better father is 100% worth it, right? To me, there's no other way. I mean, we've been running fatherhood Zooms now for over 2 years. It's crazy that I just said that. But every Thursday for 2 years, not one Thursday missed. I've had some guys sub in for me if I couldn't make it, my buddy Josh and Jimmy G. But for 2 years, this conversation has been going, and we'd be talking about parenting, peaceful parenting, becoming better fathers. And when I first went into it, right, I've read the books, I've studied, I listened to hours of podcasts, I've implemented things in my own home. And when I started talking to these other men, that's when I really started learning. When I started hearing stories from Jared and getting his input and his ideas, from Marcel, getting his input, some stuff from Zac.
Just keep it rolling.
But and now we're taking it to Twitter, and there's guys like I'm going to give a shout out to Reeves.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, dude.
Dude, me and him disagreed when we first met about disciplining kids, and we've come to a conclusion that the goal is to be a better father. So how could we take his differences and my differences and combine that and create something that's good for everybody? And it's, you know what, man, it's really cool to see this transition happen where, again, like I said earlier, the main focus is fathers coming together, fathers getting better. How can we raise our kids in a peaceful home? How can we create these young boys who are going to turn into kings and these young girls who are going to turn into queens? This is the goal. This is what we're after.
Well, it's like Adam says right here, we're the tribe of dad, and Reeves is a big influence. Reeves is crushing it. That's another dad who's making a voice known, and he's putting the content out there, whether you like it or not. And that is sort of what tripped me out with this. It was when we were doing all of this inside FOE, that was normal because that's what we do. Like, there's work to be done. Let's have these weird conversations. Let's go in the deep end of this. But then when I started seeing it on Twitter, I was like, wait a minute. You have to kind of switch gears. When I leave, our channel, when I leave FOE and I go into the real world, I got to remember, I'm not talking to FOE men. I've got to shift my perspective here, my tone. And I do the same thing with all of my social media because I'm not, it's not the same type of men.
Yell at us anymore.
So I go to Twitter and I'm sitting there and I'm talking about it. And I'm realizing these men are having those uncomfortable conversations there. And for so long, dude, I was one of a very select few that had come together. I was like, yeah, family alpha, fatherhood, marriage, masculinity. I don't care if you like it or not. That's where I'm going. That's what I'm doing. Your issues are your issues. I'm not going to stop. And then some other dads showed up like, oh, cool. Now, dude, it's fucking weird if you have kids and you're not talking about being a better dad. Like, it's getting to the point, at least from what I'm seeing, if you're choosing to have a handle and be on social media, that's sort of the caveat there. If you don't have social media, like, all right, I get it. You're still uncomfortable. It's still a taboo subject. But if you are looking to be a content creator and you have children and you're not talking about how you can be a better father, I have to ask where your priorities, how did you set those up? Because this is the greatest role you'll play in the life of another. So we talk about dad Twitter. And at first I heard the name. I'm like, that's not strong. Dad Twitter. I was like, you know why I think that? Because everything dad has been mocked. Dad jokes, dad bod, dad this, dad that. I was like, dad Twitter, it's going to be another mock. I was like, no, that's me succumbing to their conditioning of my title, dad, of father. So we've got, the only way to take that back is to use it and not in a reaction to them, but just to use it and reclaim it. So when we say dad Twitter, dude, I'm talking about the dudes who are talking about working out, fixing their bank account, fixing their relationship with their spouse, having a mission to go forward, helping other men in the process, giving presence over presence, the CE instead of the TS. That is dad Twitter. And that is what we are seeing grow. And that is fucking incredible.
What do you think happens beyond that? Right. We have Marcel here on video with us, and we have Philip in the chat. Both of these men have been to my island, well, my house on an island. They've both visited me. We've had conversations. Philip was just there last week, and we sat down. We had cigars out on the dock, and we talked about life for a few hours. And to me, that's even better than Twitter. That's real life, right? That's sitting down with another father, and instead of talking about bullshit, we're talking about where we can improve in our life, what's worked for him, what's worked for me, and we're sharing ideas. And it's face to face, right? It was really cool to see these gents, to have Philip at the house.
Well, it's real. That's always that's the big thing there. Like, oh, okay, you're forging real brotherhood, camaraderie. Go ahead, Rocky. Go lift weights in the woods. That's what they always say. That's their running joke. Oh yeah, you're really doing. You're changing lives. No, we are. We really are. These are real bonds being forged. I saw the photo. You guys sitting on the dock with the cigars, chilling. Imagine if all of these fathers who are raising their kids, instead of doing so solo and trying to figure it out, they're like, hey, my dad has friends, and my dad's friends are beasts. And Philip, I've got him down here, who says it's a long-term view versus the quick fix. Doing fatherhood right requires a long-term mission. Have the tough talks now to have the relationship in a good place when the cards are on the table. That is coming from a man who lives that. He is not saying that for cool internet points. I know him. I have met him. I have met Marcel. I have met Anthony. These men are who they say they are, and they're meeting up. Social media eliminates physical proximity. You can find these people from across the world, and then you take the next step and you meet up. Now, fortunately, we're in the same geographical location, so I'm the oddball out who hasn't jumped on any of these meetups yet. So I've got to start hanging out with you guys, I guess. And now that we're settled in, it's going to be happening. We're going to get rocking. But the fact matters, I'm looking at you guys, and we're talking to this dude, and we've all met, and we're all fathers, and we're all raising family and swapping notes. Imagine if we could get 10,000 other men doing the same, because that's where we're headed. We're headed to this being normalized. We're headed to the electronic farmers market that we're living in, where people are like, hey, who are you? What do I buy from you? Is it lifestyle? Is it information? Hey, who are you? Let me check you out. Oh, I like you. Oh, fatherhood, cool. They go to that next step. And all of a sudden, hey, this dad who didn't have any friends and know what he's doing, or felt like he was on an island and he was the weird dude for giving a shit about being a dad, he's now with 50 other dudes doing the same thing. And he goes home better than he ever was before to his wife and his children, saying, hey, your dad's not weird. Your dad found his tribe. Other motivated fathers who care about being a father. We have a question from the chat from Anthony. Anthony, I'm going to throw to you from the other Anthony or Marcel. What do you guys jump on this one? I just had a long rant.
No,
I would hear from the guys. Is fatherhood only hard when you don't have a good father figure yourself? Or is fatherhood complex enough that even those with great dads have to learn it themselves? That's a great question. Hey, welcome to Oak and Rock, Marcel. Here you go.
Yeah. Wow.
We're putting Marcel in a hot seat.
Yeah,
I'll take it, and then you can tell me I'm wrong, Anthony, and how we're really supposed to do it.
No, I don't do that.
Just another Thursday, I guess, right? So, I really, that was the question that I had for the group was, what is the entry point with other fathers, right? How do you actually start that conversation, right? Because, I've had a few that have reached out to me. So I'll point to something that Anthony, you said a while back, which is, why is it that we men are not pounding the table and demanding good fathers out of the men around us, right? So as opposed to looking at my life and my relationship with just my child, why are we not demanding that from every other good friend and every other man and just drawing a glowing red line? And Anthony, you actually said it again recently where you said, if there's a father that screams at his child and you're having dinner at their house, you're not going to just for the sake of the friendship or for the sake of status, whatever, just say, oh, sure, that's fine. You'll actually say to him, I'm just not comfortable with that. That's not what I do in my family. I don't believe in that. And, I feel that maybe we've been somewhat silenced, and that's why we're scrambled. So to the question, I do think there's an instinct there. I think we're distracted and we're removed from that right now. We're removed from the things that the cohesive family unit, from the ability to trade notes with each other, demand the best from each other. We're sort of in these like little separations from other good men. And I think that's when the chaos or the fatherhood role can be very confusing and chaotic. When you fall into that and you do share these conversations, you do find common ground and you do demand the best from other fathers, I think it just falls into place. I had a friend of mine that's going through divorce right now. And, we I think in the last 6 months had talked on the phone just once. I know him somewhat, but he knows the kind of father that I am. And he just now got served papers to go through, to, I guess, initiate divorce proceedings. And he picked up the phone. He said he called me first. And it's because he's worried for his daughters. And he knows that my life is, sort of centered in the same way his is. Now, that was my question, I guess, to you, Anthony, and even Zac, is I've had men that have, they've reached out to me and they've brought me into this discussion when they're broken. And I'm available for that anytime, of course. I would love to be honored to be the guy that people call and say I'm doing something right in life, right? And I can relay that to them. But I just don't feel like that's enough. My question is more, what are those first sentences we do? Because I can't just paint it as, hey, being a good dad is awesome. Hey, you want that kid now to understand who you are when you have that option later on. These are very punchy ways to start, and some men become very defensive. So I'm trying to figure out a mechanism where I can demand better from my close friends, where I can, having a cookout on the street, whatever it might be, strike up those conversations, but do it in a way that ultimately pulls them in all the way and sort of opens up that dialogue comfortably for them. So I guess that's the question, Anthony. I'll throw it back to you. What are some ways that you've just cracked this egg, that you've started? Because this is, I think in our heart of hearts as men, if we're broken dads, that breaks us more than anything else. I mean, if we're out of shape, if other aspects of our life is broken, so be it. But if we're a broken dad, that can really burn inside of your soul. And so it's a touchy place. And I think some of my friends might be there. I just don't know how to broach the subject.
No, that's excellent points, Marcel. And to answer your question, and then I'll get to Anthony Brown. But, there's steps to this journey. And, one thing that I always keep in the back of my mind is I have to do what I have to do regardless of what other fathers are doing. And I'm going to continue to spread my message. I'm going to continue to spread positivity. I don't care if people doubt me, if they don't believe me. If they want to sit down and speak man to man, I'll have that conversation. But if they want to try to discredit me, if they want to be negative, if they want to try to impose their bullshit onto what it is that I'm doing and building, I'm not going to be a part of it. Right? Those are men I'm not going to try to save. They might come back in later time, but until you really have the courage and the strength to talk about the truth, right? What's really going on? There's not much I can do. I'm going to have to continue to shine my light. You got to be that lighthouse, right? You can't be a tugboat. You can't let people smash you into the rocks and pull you by ropes and just, have you beating yourself up to help them. It doesn't work like that. And that is a great lesson to teach your kids, right? It's a lesson of codependency, really. We want our kids to not have to, worry about us and do things just for us and disregard themselves. We want to raise kids who are resilient, who are assertive, who, sometimes will push back against us, who will question our authority. Imagine that, right? How many men cringe when they hear that?
It's a tough one.
But look at the world we live in now, dude. We live in a world where literally you have police arresting people for wearing masks. You have police checking people for their vaccine passports or papers. And these are the men who are supposed to be protecting us from the tyrants. How the hell do these men sleep at night? How do they think that they're doing good? And you know what? I'm not going to get on a government rant here, but it all ties in, right? We have to be men of virtue, and that's something I always fall back to. So to address Anthony's question, this is difficult for a easy answer. So I'm going to try to do my best. But when you don't have a father, right, we think of that as this really bad situation that you were dealt with. And, there are other people in your life who can influence you. I mean, we have social media now. We have YouTube, and my son's always checking out people on TikTok, Instagram, guys who are lifting, and he's motivated by people all the time. Luckily he has me for that, that strong foundation. But just because you don't have a good father figure in your life, or even a father figure, doesn't mean that you're destined for failure. And even if you have, he said, if you had a good father in your life, it really depends, because even though we had a father figure, what are we judging that he was good, right? Probably, like most of us, our childhood was spent in fear, right? We were afraid. We were worried about disappointing our father. So, and I'm not saying that we couldn't take good things of value from that man, but a lot of the times, we tend to think just because a father's there, that's a sign that we're going to be okay. And that's why these conversations are important, because like you were saying, Marcel, we need to hold men accountable. If I'm around a father and he's hitting his kid, I'm surely going to say, yo, knock it off, man. What are you doing? Let me show you better ways. Right. And if he gets defensive, he gets angry with me, that's not a guy that's in my life. That's not a dude who I'm gonna break bread with or want to be around my family. I want men who can control themselves, who have that emotional stability, who can self-regulate, who can be able to have a conversation that makes them uncomfortable without getting emotional, without getting sensitive to it. So, it's important that we hold the hand to the fire, right? That we test these men sometimes and we say, hey, what does it mean to be a good man? What are you doing in your home? What are you doing in your life? And not through judgment, right? This isn't a religious war. This is through principles. The golden rule: treat others how you would want to be treated. It has to be applied to our children, no matter what.
There are two different ways I want to look at that. Do you have something, Marcel?
No. I was just going to throw out.
I don't want you to lose it, man. Fire it right back
No,
at
I do.
him.
I've got one. I mean, I think I lay claim to the fact that this is still all new to me, right? So in a sense, that's sort of an authority figure, and the fact that it's a learning curve. And I mean, I can give you some honest answers, and I'll tell you, it's when you're on whether it's a football field or whatever, men are used to sort of being punchy with each other about a lot of things, and we just don't do it around parenting. And I will tell you, on the outside, it's kind of that first time it seems very spooky, right? Because the last thing you want to do is qualify another man and say you're a horrible father. I mean, in a better way, but just, hey, there's a better way to do this. But when you throw down that glowing line, it's funny how quickly those men come back later and say, hey, let's carry on that conversation. So the glowing line that I was afraid of, all I want to point to, what Anthony said, is that glowing line, when you throw down that gauntlet, it in fact gains the respect of the men around you. And it makes them realize, hey, this father is a guy that I can reach out to later. And it's happened. It's just that first 2 or 3 times laying down that line that I was afraid of, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but my God,
for
man,
a lot of them, they don't even know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anthony.
No, I was just going to answer Marcel, just for fucking Pete's sake, man, have some dignity, have some pride, stand up for what you believe in. Those are the people I want to be friends with. That was it.
I'm going to speak, and I don't care who has anything to say. First off, shout out to Johnny. What's up, brother? Appreciate you tuning in. Next, Marcel. Somebody once told me I run my social media through a patriarch manner, and I never knew what that meant. And then I straight up, I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And he's like, oh, you're always talking about fatherhood, patriarch. I was like, all right, I get it. He's like, but also, when you talk to people, it's like you're speaking to your kids. And I was like, he's like, and I don't mean that demeaning. He's like, I don't mean it like you baby people. He's like, but you speak to them like you really want what's best for them. Like you really care. He's like, and these are fucking strangers. He's like, but you take the time to do that. And Marcel, I would throw it to you. When you're engaging these men, you're throwing down, you're banging the table like, hey man, I demand more. Like you're better than this. You come at it from a position of you're better than this. And I know you're better because I know you and I care about you as a man. This isn't judgment. This is compassion. And that too is something men are afraid of. When you sit there and you see them and look at them through those lines, as you look at your kids, there's a certain way you will speak to them. If they're doing something wrong, like, hey, you're better. Let's address this. Let's go over what's going on here because you're better than this. This isn't something you would normally do. Something's going on. It's the same thing. It's just like I was saying earlier with the power of the word dad. Because it's been bastardized and it's been put in such a negative light, my instinct was to view it as a bad thing when we were talking about dad Twitter. I took their power from that. You can take the power from the taboo around parenting and say, no, this isn't weird. This is normal. Everybody else is weird for thinking that this is something we should not discuss. That's a them problem. I'm not going to operate according to their rules. I'm going to operate according to connected and strong fathers' rules. And in those rules, you and I, we're going to talk about our kids and how we're raising them. And I'm going to tell you, hey, I think there's a better way to do this. And I would like you to tell me if you saw the same. And for a lot of these men, when you say it, it's the first time they see it. They don't even realize because they're still in the cycle, man. They don't have an FOE. They're not on dad Twitter. They don't see Open Rock videos. They see Marcel. And they go to their work and they see their family. So it's on you. The responsibility, honestly, is on your shoulders to embody all of this and bring it to those who can't see. Give them sight. That is what we're trying to do here is I'm trying not to go the religious route, but you got to open some eyes, man. There are some people who cannot see, and you've got to open some eyes. And it comes through just having the conversations and doing those things. And then lastly, to Anthony's point, the other Anthony's
Hallelujah.
point. Yeah. Can I get an amen? Listen, we're looking at it for fatherhood being difficult. If you had a father, didn't have a father, two great ways to look at that. One, if you had a great father, that saves you a lot of pitfalls you fell into that you should be able to accelerate and give to your kids to go further, as well as nobody's perfect. So whatever he did wrong, add to that. So that should set a high trajectory. If you did not have a father, you now know what wrong looks like, which means don't do that. I know how to not do something, being absent, making work the top priority, whatever it is, being abusive and violent. I'm not going to do those. I'm going to raise my kids differently. It slowed you down because you had to fall out of those holes. But just like the dude who had a dad, you can save your children from falling into what you fell into. You can break the cycle. And that's the greatest strength, whether you have a dad or not, is that it falls on you ultimately to make the better decision. Now, somebody with a great example, their trajectory is likely higher. That doesn't mean you can't match them within one generation. One generation of you doing it right, and now your kid and their kid beyond you, your child will say, I'm the guy now who had the good dad, and now my son, which will be your grandson, is going to reach the same levels as that other dude who had the dad. Somebody has to be the first. So there is no which one's easier, better, whatever. It's on you to make it work.
Yeah, if I can jump in on that really fast, it is 100% the responsibility of the actor, the father that's doing this. He has to be the one to make the decision to try and do something new, something unusual. I fall into the category of the guy who had the lousy father. I had a dad that was an honorable man. He was a hardworking man. He was honest, and he definitely loved his family, but he was not a good dad. He was far from it. In fact, I use him as my anti-example. That if you ever see me doing something that I shouldn't be doing, all you have to do is say, "Thanks, George," and I will collapse into a heap because I will realize how what I've done. But I made a decision to be different, and I have dedicated my time and my efforts to doing something different. And it has absolutely changed the nature of the relationship with my family because I did something different. And it wasn't hard to do. It was hard to realize that I needed to do it. Once the realization came in place and I found good resources, I found, Fatherhood Twitter, I found FOE, I found people that were willing to mentor me. And once I cared about it, everything changed on a dime, literally on a dime. I was able to turn around a relationship with my daughter that was wrecked beyond belief into something that now is amazing in a matter of months because I put in the work and I made the decision and I had people to help me understand how to do that.
Yeah, that was awesome to see, Jared. Truly was.
What's interesting about that, when you talk about the community, you talk about the standards, the brothers to help not just educate, but also pick you up when you slip. Over here, the guy who finally gave me that amen, Francisco Alcantara, a.k.a. Paco, I deployed with this guy. There are a lot of men in the military who are serving, that are still, they have that element of tribal to them. But a lot of fathers, once you're married and you have the kids, you pull away from that tribe. You lose your tribe because everything is about the wife and the kid. I go to work and I go home because I'm a good husband and father. And that's all I do. And I had a thread on this, and Anthony, you and I recorded the video on this. You have to invest in you. You have to make yourself, Anthony, the way you say it is the king eats first. You have to be someone who takes care of themselves. And then people will take it the wrong way. I'll let you break that one down as you did in the video because people get real upset about it. But if you don't have a sense of self, a sense of belonging, you're doing yourself an injustice and your family. You need to remain a man who goes out and does man things. You have man friends. You have hobbies. You have things you do that are not with women and children, but with you for whatever, preferences you have to what it is that you do. But if you don't have a group of dudes holding you accountable, you're just going to slowly slip into oblivion. And Marcel, I believe you're the one saying, that is some of the worst pain to feel when you're like, I used to be somebody. I used to be like a contender, like I had the uniform, I had the muscles, I had the money, I had the respect, the admiration, the hobbies, the friends. And now I have Netflix and beer and kids who are just upset and a wife who won't touch me. And I get that's an extreme, but that's also a lot of people finding themselves in that category. That's the demographic they've slipped into. And it's unfortunate to address, but it is what it is. That is where, that sense of self-loathing creeps in. That almost throwing it in the bucket, chucking the fuck it bucket. Well, I've already gotten this fat. I've already lost all that respect. You know what? Why keep trying? I'm done. This is my life until I die. And you just accept it. And it's like, man, if somebody could just just one rope could hit that dude and be like, hey, you have every opportunity to turn things around. Go talk to other fathers. That's a great start. But Anthony, with the whole moniker of the king eats first and all that, before people start saying that we're selfish assholes who put our families to the side, what exactly does the king eat first
I'll explain exactly what that means in my home. So when I'm really hungry, I don't like to be bothered when I eat. So I let my wife and my 3 kids stand in the closet while I eat my dinner. Because
patriarchy.
It's important.
That poker face, Anthony, gets me every time.
Ultimately, we talk about this all the time, right? There's a certain hierarchy. There's a certain order that things have to happen, and it doesn't take away value from anybody else in the family. There's many things that I have to do as a man, as a father, and as a husband, and instead of hiding from them, instead of being ashamed of them, I think most men need to start taking pride in those aspects of what it means to be a good man, to be the provider, to be the protector, to be the man who can be kind, but also be strong and fearless. So that's what I mean by the king eats first. Is we have to always take care of ourselves. We have to make sure that when things get tough, when we handle ourselves appropriately, we have to pat ourselves on the back. We have to understand that our mission as a father is important and it's worth taking pride in, right? We can't let other people or society break us down and tell us that we're no good. We have to embrace who we are. Or, the truth is we're men, we're fathers, and we have to enjoy that, but we also have to take pride in it. We have to we have to make sure that we're not letting the negativity and the foolishness and the littleness of the world bring us down. So I just wanted to backtrack a little bit. What you were saying before, Zac, about how you interacted with people, right? How you earned the trust of men, or you're empathetic, right? People, they listen to what you have to say. They feel what you're saying. And I think that's important to go into the little bit of the struggles that most fathers face, right? They come from a position of authority. They think because I'm a dad that I have this magical power, that I could say things and my kids will listen. And what happens is those things escalate. And when they escalate, we get our feelings hurt, right? We get a little butt hurt that our kids aren't listening to us. And then we escalate the situation even more. We get angry, we get frustrated, we get mad. And this just causes a constant turmoil. It damages the relationship we have with our kids. So what you were saying before, if we can recognize this as fathers, that once we're able to talk to our children in a way that they know that we're speaking for their best interest, not just telling them that this is for your own good, but we're telling, that they really believe that the way we talk to them and how we speak to them is for their own good, and they can trust us, that is when you're going to have their attention. That's when they're going to start listening more. Otherwise, you're just throwing fuel on a fire. You're just making the situation worse because you think that you're being belittled or you're being undermined. And that's an important part I think fathers need to understand, right? You can't get leadership unless it's if it's not coming from your heart, if you're demanding and you're trying to apply pressure and make your kids obey because you're bigger, stronger, louder, or whatever the excuse is, you're not going to have a positive impact, right? You're going to have the exact opposite. You're going to have resistance. You're going to have counter will. You're going to have kids who don't want to be controlled by somebody they're not close to. So just wanted to touch on that.
That's what you're seeing with the dad Twitter guys, though. And I think that's why it's working so well and why I'm very particular. You know, like if I didn't like the dad Twitter guys, I'd be like, fuck no, I'm not part of dad Twitter. Like, no, do not put me in a group. I don't want my name associated with certain groups. That group, they are very empathetic. And that's a great choice of word, because these men feel what these other dads coming up to them are sharing. Like, they genuinely feel it, you know, and I'm an empathetic dude. It's kind of my style of leadership. I relate to you. I get it. I'm with you. Let's build it. Let's grow. Let's go. You know, that's sort of the mantra there. These men, and I'm watching it play out. Sometimes I don't even comment. I'll just scroll through and watch these dads, like the guys you see in the chat. You know, they're like, hey, what's your issue? A dad will break down. Here's where I'm at. Oh, dude, you know, I was there not too long ago. Here's what I did. But hey, let's bring this to DM so we can talk specifics, because obviously you don't want to air everything out. And I'm just like, holy shit, that dude live just brought him to the corner. It's just like at a party. Hey, let's leave the group. Let's go sit over here and have a real talk. That's basically what he did online. These dudes in dad Twitter, they're going from, hey, have sex with your wife and just, you know, tell the kids to screw off, you know, raise kings, queens. No, there's more than just saying words here. You can't just say, I'm going to raise kings and queens. Like, what does that mean to you? You yell at your kids frequently and you get pissed off when they interrupt you while you're scrolling Twitter talking about how great of a dad you are. That's not how the fuck that works. that is literally the opposite of how that works, you know, because they are the priority. You should have a great connection with your child and then talk about it, not talk about how you should have a great connection with your child while you don't have one. You know, it's not about looking successful or looking connected. It's about being that. And when you are that, when you live it, you can give it. And a lot of these men on dad Twitter, admittedly, are still working on a lot of things. So they're sharing while they're learning, while the others who have already gone through that, they're sharing how they got it, but now what that led to. Some of your positive changes lead to negative outcomes. Sometimes you do all the right things, but now you're like, oh, I've got a whole new series of problems. You know, my kids aren't listening to anybody. You know, they're sitting there saying, nobody tells me what to do. And in some environments, that could be conflict. So how does a dad who's raised a sovereign child get that child to fit in when necessary to get wherever they want to go? Or should they just tell them not to? And these are separate discussions, but I'm seeing these dads share the real story. They're sharing the real experiences and not the internet polished story that people often fall back on because they want to appear, have all their shit together.
It goes back to something you've said before, which is you wouldn't trust a man who has never failed. You don't want that person in your life, because if they haven't failed, then they either haven't been paying attention or they haven't been trying. And the same thing goes with fatherhood. If I have somebody that tells me, you know what, I'm the best father you've ever seen, let me tell you how it's done, that guy can go to hell, because there's no such thing. If you think you're that good, then you should be making millions of dollars by showing everybody how wonderful you are. No, you are screwing up as a dad. That's life. That's what you do. It's how do you recover from screwing up? Where do you go to find a better answer? When you've screwed up and you know you have a problem, do you find people that can then help you find a new answer? That's what matters. If you think you're that good, I don't even want to talk to you anymore.
You know, if I can throw into, I think for some fathers out there, you know, I would challenge them just to say these two words and tell me which one's more familiar and has rolled off your tongue, right? Say the word matriarch. I mean, that's common. We see it everywhere. You know, a strong woman, a strong mother, sort of the nuclear center is how society always paints it. And I'm not against that. I'm in love with my wife because I think she is a strong matriarch. But when's the last time you heard anybody say patriarch, right? The father's role. And, you know, what question that I'm posing there is, there are these distinct roles that each of us have. And if you're a very strong father, your strong wife will emerge. Your children will each fall into their role. And to be honest with you, whether or not she'll ever admit it, on the other side of that coin, your wife will reward you when you're a very strong father. It's just the reality of it's what they desire, right? I mean, if you think of me in the role, looking at my wife and the times that she's a good mother to my kids, and she doesn't spank them. She gives them wisdom, gives them, you know, these things that a man can't provide. I find that extremely attractive. And it draws me to her. And I think men miss out that maybe it's because a mother doesn't say it directly, but they're under what they think they'll be underwhelmed if they try to actually be that role in the family. And trust me, on the other side of it, you'll be rewarded.
I mean, it's incredible to see the transform. And obviously, this is somewhat privy to a certain group, but to see the growth that's happening in FOE, that you can't make it up. There's just no way. And I think that's what I really enjoy. Again, bringing it back to Dad's Twitter and kind of the overlap there with what we're doing. It's real. It's genuine. And the things you're sharing here about like, hey, like this is where you can go. This isn't theory that Marcel is sharing with you. This is experience. This is lived experience. All 4 men in this panel, we're not talking about what we read in the book. We're talking about, well, sometimes we're taking things from the book and applying it. But these are not theories. This is, hey, here's what I did. Here's what the consequences of those choices. Here's how I changed. Here's how I improved. And here's the result. And the life I have, it didn't, quote unquote, just happen. It didn't just show up and all of a sudden we were always like this, white picket fence, Disney fairy tale ending and all that. It was work. It was reps. It was showing up. It was having the difficult discussions. It was facing the objective truth and not my subjective preference. There's a lot that goes into it. But when you look at it, and you're just looking at the dudes in the chat sharing this. From Marcus, amen. There's action behind the words of Dad Twitter. We live through our mistakes to the point out where we went wrong so this can help other dads. I'm far from perfect and willing to learn from others. Imagine that. A man who's willing to put down the pride and say, hey, I need to follow right now. I am the patriarch. I am the king of my family. But in this moment, I need to learn something. So I'm going to follow you. You take me where I need to go. You educate me and show me the way. It's an incredible thing when men know you have their best interests at heart. Men know that you are doing something that genuinely is to help them. They put the guard down. They trust you. And trust is a very difficult thing to develop on social media. But we're doing it. We're doing it now, just the 4 of us. This is as close to sitting at a table and having this discussion as one can get. It's trust. I trust you guys to come on here and to espouse the things that we've been saying. You trust me to do the same. That's the strength, though. You can't fake it for too long. At some point, one of the 4 of us would have tripped if we were lying. Except Anthony. He's over there in that fucking apartment or whatever that he's got going on right now, the hotel. I don't think he ever left New York. All this South Carolina shit. It was an Airbnb for a month.
No, listen. What we were saying before, holding men accountable. I think it's imperative. It needs to be done. And one last point I want to make. We hold our kids to standards, right? We say, oh, you have to go to school, even if they don't want to go to school. Even if it's not their choice. And then we say, oh, you have homework you have to do. You're going to have a test tomorrow. And we expect them to study and do good on that test. When you become a father or before you become a father, you have 9 months to get prepared and get ready. There should be no excuses and no reason why you are not doing the work to become a better father, to be prepared, to support your wife, to support your kids. And we need to stop making excuses about that. The same way that we can't hold our kid to higher standards than we're willing to do ourselves. So until we start holding ourselves to higher standards than our kids, we're going to see kids who are fucked up. We're going to see kids who are a mess and who don't care about each other, who don't care about themselves. And it starts with us. We have to start being accountable for ourselves. We have to start having these conversations more often and holding fathers accountable for what it is we're doing.
I completely agree. And I just threw Marcel back behind the oak and rock sign. Man,
it's fine. I'm honored.
Looking good, bro.
Look at that too.
Hey, we're going to throw it around the table real quick. So Marcel, final words for those listening in who are looking to take that step.
I think the moment for every father is when the old version of you kind of runs right by. And it can happen in a moment where a kid comes at you and does something wrong. Like my son came in today. He had one thing he was focusing on. He got a D. And as I was walking towards him, he was like frozen with panic in his eyes, thinking that he was just going to get read the riot act. And I gave him a hug and I told him, the number one line in my family, if it's broken, fix it. And we worked through it all. But that old version of me ran right by me, and I wasn't that guy this time. And that's the moment that I think fathers have that's a wow factor, because you realize not only is the goal for change in your mind, you've just impacted you've impacted that, and you just reap the rewards with your son. And so when you build that courage to take those small steps, learn from better men, stronger men, and then carry other men with you, it's amazing. It's beautiful to watch.
Well said. Jared, any closing points for the good people?
The biggest point from my experience as a father is that it's never, ever too late to start something better. No matter where you are at, no matter how crappy your relationships with your kids are, no matter how much of a screw up you may feel that you are, guess what? You can start right now. And you can become better, and you can improve relationships. It will be hard. Yes. It will be very painful. Yes. But if you want to make the change, you can when you decide to do it. But you have to make that decision. But once you do, amazing things happen. Amazing things happen. It's far better than even you can imagine. I mean, you can sit there and say, well, it'd be great if I had this good relationship with my kids. And then once it comes there, you're like, oh, this was way better than I thought it was going to be. And so just start. There's nothing that can stop you once you make that decision. So never too late. Always worth the effort, and always try.
I like that. Always worth the effort. It's very well said. Anthony.
Yo.
What you got, brother? Another one down.
Nothing, man. Good, great conversation. Marcel, Jared, thanks for coming on, guys. Let's just end it. It went well.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming on. Anthony is literally the worst at closing out any of these things, so I'm just going to take it from here.
It's a remarkable thing, really. It's a thing of beauty. I mean, you have to look at it in this form of, like, it's so rare to have something so bad.
It's like just say goodbye.
Cut it.
Say goodbye.
Hello?
It's
Peace.
I kind of enjoy watching it. It's like a train wreck kind of thing.
It's incredible how bad you are, Anthony. We're genuinely impressed. Marcel, Jared, look, you guys, honestly, thank you very much for your time. You guys are busy men. I know it. Having to talk about fatherhood, though, with us constantly having other men coming on, it's normalizing it. This is normal to have these talks, and I can't stress it enough, but we have to show people, and that's what we did tonight. So thank you for your time. Anthony, another one down, man. Let's just keep it rolling. For those who tuned in, make sure you like and subscribe. Set the reminder for the next one. Every Wednesday, we're running a Q&A. Our next video will be dropping this Friday, and Monday, we have a special guest who will be dropping to talk about parenting in the military. So you guys stay well, and fathers, stay present. Take care.